Tuxedo Terrace by Carmine Bicchetti. Exterior, MGM Studios, Hollywood, California, 1959, Day. A 1950s song by Doris Day plays. Cut 2. Title sequence, MGM Studios backlot. Montage of the sound stages on MGM's backlot and the various films being produced and shot that day, including Stage 12, 2 actors in a Cadillac convertible that's not moving while a background of the French Riviera rotates behind on a screen behind. Stage 17, a group of men dressed in Renaissance garb debating in a castle while the crew watches and takes notes. Stage 18, a swanky couple in black tie attire dance about a ballroom as the camera cranes above. Stage 20, a set of a street scene as a man in a trench coat emerges from the shadows and shoots another man. As the man falls to the floor in his death scene, a frustrated director walks onto the set implying that he did something wrong. Stage 21 at MGM Studios features an exterior of a perfectly styled 1950s home, flanked by a garden of bright flowers and surrounded by a white picket fence. The cameras and crew are all focused at the front door. Marty, production assistant, holds a slate to the camera.
My one and only, scene 33, take 17. Action.
An actress in a perfectly 1950s house dress opens the front door and looks off camera. Suddenly, an actor dressed in a naval officer's uniform walks up to the fence.
Johnny, is that really you?
I told you I'd come back for you.
He walks up to her and wraps his arms around and gives her a long kiss. They hold in each other's arms.
Cut.
The actor and actress quickly separate as she adjusts her dress.
Okay, that was perfect. Let's just do it one more for safety.
Lorenzo walks over, early 40s, handsome Italian immigrant who works in the hair department. Lorenzo uses a small comb to smooth out her hair and sprays it with hairspray. He's incredibly fussy and detailed about the smallest strand.
Stanley, we've done about 15 already that you said were perfect. If I didn't know any better, I'd say Charlie was paying you to keep shooting so he could keep smooches in.
My dear, if you think Charlie's getting enjoyment out of smooching you, then he's a better actor than I give him credit for.
You mean... No way. Lorenzo, I honestly had no idea. How can you tell?
This is my third picture with him. After a while, you can pick up on the signs. Plus, he screwed my friend Billy.
Damn. And this whole time I thought I felt something in his kiss.
You did. His lip gloss.
Lorenzo, you're too much. Are you coming to the rap party tonight?
No, I can't. I have an early call on the variety show tomorrow.
A variety show? You're the best hairdresser at MGM. What the hell are you doing a variety show for?
A favor for a friend.
Lorenzo, I'd like to wrap this picture before my bromo seltzer wears off. Can you stop fussing with the hair already?
Sorry, Stanley. You look gorgeous, doll.
Thanks.
Okay, people, let's take it back to one, and this is the last take. I promise.
Lorenzo walks off the set and looks down at his watch. He throws down the can of hairspray and grabs his jacket off a nearby chair. He pulls his tie up and buttons the top button of his shirt. Checking himself out in the mirror, he grabs some tonic for his hair and smooths it out. He picks up a compact and powders his nose. Rita, heavy-set woman in her late 50s, bawdy but glamorous, appears in the mirror, watching him from behind.
You look great, boss.
Thanks, Rita. Will you finish up for me?
Sure thing. See you in the morning?
Unless they raid the place.
Lorenzo makes his way off the soundstage. Cut to exterior MGM Studios lot, seconds later. Golf carts and bicycles whiz by as actors and crew go to and fro. Eddie Fisher, handsome and well-groomed, dressed casually and carrying sheet music, stands talking to Kitty, late 20s, beautiful with a strawberry blonde bob. Kitty's the only woman on the lot wearing pants, and she carries a stack of papers. Her eyes squint behind cat-eye lenses.
Hey, Wop, where are you off to in such a rush?
Wop, really? I thought we were friends.
We are friends. You know, there's a lot worse words that I could use, believe me.
Stick with Wop.
Want to grab a drink with me? You know, we just finished rehearsal.
I can't, Eddie. I'm late for a thing.
A thing? Where? With who?
At a place with a person. I'll tell you tomorrow.
We changed your call time. You're an hour earlier, 6 a.m.
6 a.m.? In the morning?
Lorenzo.
Okay. I gotta run. See you guys later.
What? No kiss goodbye?
Lorenzo walks over to Kitty and gives her a peck goodbye.
Bye, Kitty.
He grabs Eddie and lays a smooch on him, too.
Good night, Edward.
Ooh, now that's more like it.
Lorenzo runs away from them as Eddie shouts.
Don't do anything I wouldn't do.
That I cannot promise.
Cut to interior Formosa Cafe 30 minutes later. Lorenzo walks into the dimly lit cafe and takes a moment to scan the room with his eyes. Most of the booths are occupied by couples, mostly businessmen with female prostitutes. A corner table has an older man with 2 sailors in uniform. Lorenzo looks over at the bar and sees a few couples and groups chatting quietly. One man sits alone in a brown suit, sipping on a Coca-Cola. He's tall and attractive. Lorenzo smiles slightly when he sees him. He approaches the man trepidatiously.
Hi.
Hello?
Sam's friend?
Sam who?
Sam, from the props department? I'm Chip's friend.
Unless your name is Linda, I don't think I'm who you're meeting.
Linda? No, unfortunately not. I mean, definitely not a Linda. Although I did dress up as Miss Linguini for a party once, but it's a long story that involves a lot of grappa.
The man gives him a slight smile.
Well, now I'm sorry that I'm not Sam's friend, because that sounds like a story I'd like to hear.
Well, maybe I can tell you sometime.
They are interrupted by the door opening, casting a stream of sunshine in the dark room. Linda walks in. She's in her mid-20s, pretty but rather plain. The man gets up to greet her as Lorenzo sulks back into the shadows and orders a drink from the bar. Cut to interior Formosa Cafe 10 minutes later. Lorenzo awkwardly sits in a booth across from Milton, a small wisp of a man in his late 40s. Milton is obviously very nervous.
You sure you're okay?
I think so. Yeah, I've only done this one at a time.
Done what one other time? Drink?
No. Meet with a man.
Oh, I see.
Have you been with a lot of men? I mean,
I've had some experience in the field, but obviously haven't had much success.
oh, I see.
Tell me what it is that you do again, Milton.
Well, please, when we're out in public, don't use my real name. Call me something else.
What would you like me to call you?
Oh, I don't know. How about Duke?
Duke? Like John Wayne?
I really like that.
Okay then, Duke it is.
Lorenzo takes a long, disappointed sip of his cocktail. He notices the man in the brown suit sitting a few booths back, talking to Linda. His eyes light up upon noticing him, and he smiles. They lock eyes for just a second before the man turns back to his date. Lorenzo takes another swig of his cocktail. Fade to exterior Lorenzo and Kitty's bungalow, late evening. The sun is setting in the Hollywood Hills as Lorenzo pulls his Cadillac into the driveway of his pristine mid-century modern bungalow. A sign reveals the name of the street is Tuxedo Terrace. A Billie Holiday record can be heard from inside the house as Lorenzo makes his way to the door. Cut to interior Lorenzo and Kitty's living room moments later. Lorenzo swings open the door to reveal an immaculately designed Hollywood Regency home. The sound of a woman giggling can be heard coming from the far side of the sofa. Lorenzo suspiciously and angrily makes his way around the room to discover Kitty and Lisette embracing romantically and laughing on the floor in front of the fireplace. Lisette is a French-born bombshell with big brown eyes and a sexy European sense of style.
What the hell is going on?
Lorenzo!
Why is this goddamn fireplace on? It's June, for Christ's sake.
Kitty got cold. See, I told you he'd be mad.
Oh, he's not mad. Just grumpy because his date didn't go well.
I am too mad.
He turns the fire off.
And how do you know my date didn't go well?
Because it's 7:20 and you're already home. That's a new record.
Well, I'm glad you're keeping score.
Lorenzo walks over to the bar cart and proceeds to make himself a martini.
What was wrong with this one?
He's voting for Nixon.
Oh God, Republican? Where'd you meet him? Through Charlton Heston?
That's a mistake you don't want to make twice. Chip set me up.
Well, you're welcome to join us for dinner if you'd like.
No thanks. I'll just head to my room.
He grabs an entire bottle of gin and a martini glass with an olive and proceeds down the hallway.
But you should eat something.
Without turning around, he holds up his glass.
I've got an olive.
Cut to interior Lorenzo's bedroom. Lorenzo turns on the lamp in his bedroom to shine light on a very large master suite. He kicks off his shoes and takes off his jacket. Returning his jacket to the closet, he reveals an impressive collection of suits, all organized by color. He slumps into a chair with his drink and picks up the phone. Cut to interior Chip's bathroom, evening. Chip Matthews is a flamboyant gay man with giant saucers for eyes and a huge wave of blonde hair. He's soaking in his bathtub drinking champagne. His mannerisms and voice make him sound extremely effeminate, and there's no denying that he's a homosexual. An ornate Victorian-style phone next to his tub rings, and he answers it with glee.
Hello.
Oh, good evening, Doris. This is Lorenzo. Is Chip available?
It's me, fool.
Oh, sorry. You sounded like a woman. Well, I mean more than usual.
Very funny. You're home awfully early. I'm guessing Milton was a real ball of laughs.
Lorenzo kicks off his shoes and settles into an armchair.
That was a terrible fix-up. What am I going to do with a man who's never even seen All About Eve?
He's never seen All About Eve? What's wrong with him?
He doesn't want to appear too gay. He loves his wife, all 300 pounds of her.
Perhaps you should have thought of her before screwing half the chorus boys and the king and I.
He did? Pig.
Chip is scrubbing himself with a loofah on a stick.
Getting to know you took on a whole new meaning.
I give up, Chip. It's just impossible to meet a man.
What are you talking about? I meet a new man almost every night.
He lifts a perfectly arched foot out of the bath water and scrubs it.
Yes, but I want to see mine the next day. Have breakfast, play tennis, listen to albums. You should see how sickeningly sweet Kitty and Lisette are.
Disgusting.
Oh, stop. You know you wanted to.
Lorenzo pops an olive into his mouth.
I'm perfectly comfortable being perfectly comfortable in my modest Bel Air estate, thank you very much.
Modest? You have an entire room dedicated to your hats.
Doris likes me in hats. As you know, skin this fair can never see the sun.
And we can't upset the gravy train.
Choo-choo!
How is Doris, by the way?
She's fine, unfortunately.
Chip.
Well, come on, Lorenzo. Who would have guessed that she lived this long? The only reason I married her was because I thought I'd have to play house for a few weeks, a couple months tops. It's been 4 years. How many women do you know that drink a bottle of sherry a day live to be 87?
87? Jesus, maybe I'd better switch to sherry.
Lorenzo takes a big gulp of his martini.
So, what's a few more years? She lets you do whatever you want, and you practically have a whole wing to yourself in that modest palace of hers.
Well, at the rate she's going, I'll be dead before she is.
God forbid. Then who am I going to call and gripe about men too?
I really do wish I could find someone for you. Did you swing by the dance class at MGM?
I went yesterday. Same old ballerinas.
What about giving Monty Clift another shot? You always liked him.
He's an alcoholic.
He eats the last olive from his martini.
Well, isn't that the pot calling the kettle drunk?
I only drink socially.
And socially.
Well then, bottoms up.
Lorenzo finishes his martini. Off screen, an old woman's voice can be heard calling for Chip.
Chip! Chippy darling, it's time for me to turn in. Aren't you going to come say goodnight?
Be right there, sweetums.
She's going to bed at 8 p.m.
Yes, she is. And as soon as I tuck her in and give her a smooch on her forehead, I'm off to Formosa for drinks. Meet me?
No, thanks. I think I'll stay in tonight, sweetums.
Well, if you change your mind, you know where I'll be.
Chippy!
Coming, Doris!
Chip hangs up. Lorenzo hangs up his phone and looks at his glass, which is empty. He stands up, wobbly, as he's clearly had a lot to drink. He walks out of his bedroom. Cut to interior, Lorenzo and Kitty's living room, dining room. Moments later, Lisette is reading the back of an album as Kitty's setting the table. Lorenzo makes his way from the hall back to the bar cart in the living room.
Change your mind about dinner?
I came back for another olive. That last one had gin in it. Could you believe?
Scandalous.
The phone rings. Lisette picks it up.
Hello.
Lorenzo is mixing his drink.
If that's Chip, tell him I've fallen into my martini glass and I won't be back until I've drunk my way out of it.
Lisette covers the phone with her hand.
It's not Chip. It's the INS.
Well, I hope it's for you.
He puts his cocktail into his glass. Lisette softly shakes her head no as she holds the phone out to Lorenzo. Lorenzo looks back at Kitty and then reaches out for the phone.
Hello?
Mr. Lucarelli?
Lucatelli.
Oh, pardon me. My name is Brian O'Sullivan. I'm with the Department of Immigration and Naturalization Services.
Yes, and how can I help you?
Well, Mr. Lucatelli, I've been specially assigned to your case, and I would like to set up an appointment to come interview you and Mrs. Lucatelli as soon as possible.
My case? I don't understand.
He looks over at Kitty, who is frozen in curiosity.
Oh, well, you see, Mr. Lucatelli, whenever an immigrant marries an American citizen, the INS will follow up within a year of that marriage to check the validity of the union.
The validity of the union?
Yeah, just to inspect that you and Catherine are, in fact, legitimately in love and not just pretending to be together so that you could stay in the United States.
That's ridiculous. Of course we're legitimate. We're married in a Catholic church, for Christ's sake. She wore Dior.
He slams his martini down on the table. Kitty walks over to the phone and puts her hand on Lorenzo's hand out of fear and concern.
There's no need to get worried, Mr. Lucatelli. If you'll make the time to have me come visit your home, I'll just have you answer a few questions and you won't risk deportation.
Deportation? Listen here, buddy. If you think I'm going back to Italy, then you've got another thing coming.
Kitty snatches the phone out of Lorenzo's hand.
Mr. O'Sullivan, this is Mrs. Lucatelli. I apologize for my husband. He's got one of those hot tempers Italians are famous for.
Kitty turns her back and we can no longer hear O'Sullivan on the other end of the phone.
Oh, yes. Okay, not a problem at all. We'd love to have you. Why not come by for dinner? Say Friday night? Dinner at 8? We're at... Oh, well, I guess you know where we live. You work for the government. Okay, we will see you then. Have a good night, Mr. O'Sullivan.
Kitty hangs up the phone. She sits at the dining room table.
Lisette, darling, bring me a scotch and water.
Lisette walks over to the bar. Lorenzo walks over to Kitty.
Dinner? You invited him to dinner?
Well, what else was I going to do? He wants to come over and see that we're a real couple. And you didn't do much of a job convincing him. Dior dress? Really? That's all you remember about our wedding?
No, there was cake too, I think. I was pretty drunk.
Well, there's a surprise.
Lisette walks over and hands Kitty her drink.
Well, you already fight like a married couple. Keep this up in front of the agent and you'll be fine.
This is ridiculous. Since when does the government care about Italians in Hollywood? Damn Sophia Loren.
Oh, will you relax? It's going to be fine. We invite the man over for a quick dinner, hold hands, pretend to be in love, and off he goes. It's not like we don't like about who we are every day.
I don't. The very reason I came to the city was that it was the one place I thought I didn't have to pretend to be someone else.
Are you kidding? Everyone I know is pretending to be someone they're not. Just yesterday I saw a paperboy on a billboard for Philip Morris.
So?
So, I know he smokes Palmas.
Lorenzo looks at Kitty.
What the hell is she talking about?
I think what she's trying to say is that the whole city is full of phonies. And we're no different. Don't you remember what it was like when you were in the closet all those years?
It was awful. Lying to everyone I knew, no real friends, constantly feeling like I'm living a lie.
Welcome to Hollywood.
She picks up a cigarette case and lights one.
If you could do that for 20 years, then you can do it for 2 hours on Friday night.
2 hours? Oh, Christ. Okay, you're right, I can pretend. Again.
That a girl.
She slaps him on the back.
I'm just going to have to butch it up a little. I can do that.
Sure you can. And I can be more ladylike. I'll even wear a dress.
And heels.
Heels?
Yes, heels.
Oh, you can wear my black ones. I'll wear my new green ones.
You?
What about me?
You can't be here.
Why not?
Because he's coming to have dinner with Mr. and Mrs. Lucatelli, not Mr. and Mrs. Lucatelli and her lesbian lover.
Ah, you won't know about us.
She flicks her cigarette into an ashtray.
Are you kidding? One of you can pass, sure, but put the two of you together and you look like a pair of...
A pair of what?
Yes, a pair of what?
Siamese house cats.
Si vulgaire.
Lisette walks to the bar to make herself a drink.
Lisette, with all due respect, the only reason I let you live here is because Kitty's been so wonderful helping me cover up that you know.
Drive on the wrong side of the street.
Thank you. And in return, I promised her I'd respect her life and she can do whatever she pleases. Now, I know you pay me rent, but what the hell good is that going to do if I get deported back to Italy when this guy discovers my wife has a live-in French lover?
Lisette walks back over.
Kitty, tell him he's wrong. I should be there too.
I'm sorry, Amour, but it's just too much of a risk. It'll just be easier if it's the two of us on this one.
Fine. Don't include me. You know, now I remember why I agreed to move in here. I get to have my own room to storm off to when I get mad at the two of you.
She storms off down the hall and slams the door. Kitty goes after her.
Kitty, let her go.
Kitty stops herself.
She knows we're right. And if she doesn't, let's just hope she stays locked in there until after Friday.
Cut to interior MGM Studios, stage 11, the next morning. A busy sound stage at MGM Studios as cast and crew prepare to shoot a scene. There are dozens of beautiful girls wearing the same dress, and Eddie is in the center of the elaborate stage. Erica, a gorgeous blonde 21-year-old chorus girl, sits in front of Lorenzo as he fusses with her hair. Rita stands near. Marty comes over.
Is she all done yet? We're ready on set.
Lorenzo sprays the hair with hairspray, locking it in place.
She's giving him a hard time about the hair. She doesn't like it.
Again? We've been through this twice already.
Oh, I don't know why they cast her. Eddie knows that she and Lorenzo absolutely hate each other.
Marty motions to Erica's bosoms.
I'll give you 2 guesses.
Okay, Marty, she's all yours.
He backs away and admires his work. Erica seems angry.
I'm not going out there with hair like this.
Erica, sweetie, all the other girls have the exact same hair. It's what the director and Mr. Fisher decided. You're the girl we're featuring up front, so please, don't make a fuss.
I am not going out there with this hair.
Lorenzo throws his hands up in disgust. Eddie Fisher walks over.
What's the hold over here? I gotta sing this number before I forget the words.
She doesn't want to shoot the scene with her hair like this.
It's the 3rd time I changed it. I'm not changing it again.
Maybe we should change the hairdresser then.
Lorenzo scowls at her.
Well, what's wrong with it, doll? I think it looks swell.
That's exactly the problem. I look swell, just like all the other girls. I don't stand out. I'm supposed to be the featured girl.
Lorenzo rolls his eyes.
Well, darling, we don't have much time, and we're costing the studio a lot of money, so you were sure you won't change your mind?
Erica crosses her arms in defiance.
I repeat, I am not.
Going out there with that hair? Yeah, we got it. Lorenzo, is there anything we can do?
It's your special. Will you give me permission to do whatever I want?
Whatever you want.
Lorenzo walks over to Erica and pulls the hair off her head, revealing that it was a wig the entire time. Erica shrieks in embarrassment.
Can we get another girl, please?
Another chorus girl to the set, please.
He walks away searching for a girl. Angrily, Erica turns to Lorenzo.
Why, you nasty man.
Lorenzo leans onto the chair and gets close to Erica's face.
Honey, believe me, Hollywood is a fickle, fickle business. And if you don't learn how to roll with the punches, there's always another girl behind you who will.
Marty walks over with another chorus girl.
Lorenzo, this is Claire. She's ready for you.
Claire, do you have any issue with this wig?
No, sir.
Erica, if you wouldn't mind.
He motions for her to evacuate the chair. Erica gets up from the chair angrily, and as she walks away, she turns to give Lorenzo a nasty look and utters one final word.
Beg.
She turns back around and walks off. Lorenzo seems hurt by her words, but shakes it off and turns to Claire.
Now, my dear, isn't this your lucky day?
Cut to interior MGM Studios later that day. Lorenzo walks with Eddie out of stage 11 and over to the commissary. As they walk, they pass a variety of actors in costumes. They're in mid-conversation.
So basically, you have to pretend to be married to your wife.
I'm already married to my wife, Ed. I have to pretend I want to be married to my wife, that it's legit, that I love her and all that.
Like, pretend like you're not Fagella?
Yes, exactly.
For how long?
One dinner.
Oh, you can do that.
Can you give me a few pointers?
Eddie stops walking.
Me? Sure.
He walks into the commissary and Lorenzo follows. Cut to interior MGM commissary seconds later. A busy high-end cafe on the studios lot. Eddie and Lorenzo walk in and sit at a table in the corner. Eddie watches as Lorenzo sits down elegantly and places his napkin on his lap gently.
First things first, don't sit like that.
Like what?
Like that, like Vivian Lee.
I've never even met Vivian Lee.
You know what I'm saying. Don't sit down like that, like a gentle flower, and delicately toss your napkin on your lap. Walk in there, plant yourself in that chair like you own it. Grab that napkin and throw it across you like you don't care. Get up and do it again.
Oh, God. Okay.
Lorenzo gets up from the table and takes a few steps back in his relaxed fashion. He steadies himself and takes a breath and comes back, slamming himself into the chair hard and grabbing the napkin forcefully and throwing it down onto his lap.
Well, you went from Blanche Dubois to Stanley Kowalski.
Too angry?
Oh, maybe just a smidge, but at least I believed you.
Billy, the waiter, approaches. He's tall and thin and slightly balding. He appears very experienced with Eddie and Lorenzo.
Afternoon, gentlemen.
Ah, you Billy? How goes it?
Every day above ground's a good day, or at least that's what they tell me.
He pulls out a pencil and pad.
What'll it be?
Well, I'll get a roast beef on rye with extra mustard and a cup of coffee.
And for you, Mr. Lucatelli?
I think I'll take my usual trout almondine with julienne.
Eddie clears his throat loudly.
What, no good?
Eddie shakes his head no.
Sorry, I changed my mind. Let me have a steak rare, covered in onions, and a baked potato.
Very good, sir.
Billy walks away.
Better?
Much.
Lorenzo pulls out a cigarette and holds it in his hand.
Don't hold your cigarette like that between your fingers. You look like you're waiting for a man to come and light it.
Well, maybe I am.
Eddie reaches across the table and lights it.
I know, but you don't want him to think that. Just hold it like this, like Bogey did.
Bogey's dead. They said it was from smoking. Maybe I better hold it the other way.
Yeah, suit yourself. What you drink?
Gin.
I'll switch to bourbon. Gin is for people who can't handle bourbon.
But I can't handle bourbon. That's why I drink gin.
Oh, you'll get used to it, believe me.
Eddie, do you think you can come to the dinner? You and Elizabeth? It'd be a really big help.
What? How would that be a big help?
Think about what a distraction you'd be. You're the most famous couple in the world.
Yeah, for all the wrong reasons.
Come on, Eddie, you're my friend. Who was there in the front row on your first night on TV? Who lit your cigar when your daughter was born? Who did your wife's hair for your wedding?
Which one?
Well, both, actually.
Okay, I'll talk to Elizabeth about it, but I can't make any promises.
Lorenzo takes a drag from his cigarette nervously. Billy arrives with the food.
Here you go, gentlemen. Can I get you anything else?
Give me a bourbon. Neat.
Attaboy.
Lorenzo looks down at his food. He cuts his steak into small pieces with precision. He reaches for the salt shaker and shakes a little salt into his palm, then gingerly sprinkles salt on his food.
That's another thing, how you eat.
What's wrong with how I eat?
care less about the food and how it looks, just shove it in your mouth.
Oh, I can't do that. I'm Italian.
Billy drops off the bourbon and Lorenzo takes a sip. He makes a face of disgust and can barely swallow it. Eddie reaches across the table and tips the glass up so Lorenzo swallows more. Cut to interior, Lorenzo and Kitty's bungalow later that evening. Kitty is sitting in the living room, a basket of sewing items on the floor. On the sofa is a pair of slacks that she seems to be repairing.
Elizabeth Taylor? In my house?
Maybe, I can't promise, but Eddie said he's going to try.
Oh my god. Elizabeth Taylor is coming to my house.
What's the big deal? You've met Elizabeth before.
Well, yes, but in our house? I mean, for the rest of my life, I'm going to get to say that Elizabeth Taylor sat in this chair, or drank from this glass, or used this toilet.
One too far.
Sorry, I'm just so excited. Oh my gosh, wait until I tell Lisette. Oh god, Lisette, she's going to be heartbroken. We can't, Lorenzo. We have to let her come, please.
Kitty, we talked about this. How are we supposed to explain your lesbian lover to the INS? It's just easier if she's not there. She's a big girl. She'll understand.
I know, but Elizabeth Taylor is her favorite actress.
I know. I'll tell her tonight.
No, I'll tell her.
You don't have to tell me. I've been standing here the whole time.
Kitty and Lorenzo turn to see Lisette standing in the doorway with groceries.
Please.
Kitty stands up and drops her sewing.
It's okay, mon amour. I understand. I really do. I have to put these away before the ice cream melts.
She walks through to the kitchen. Lorenzo and Kitty give each other a look of disappointment.
Let me talk to her.
No, I'll talk to her.
Kitty walks out of the room. Lorenzo picks up the sewing from the floor. Fade to interior, Lorenzo and Kitty's house moments later. Lorenzo walks down the hallway and stops to spy through a partially open door. Through the crack in the door, it's revealed that Kitty is consoling an upset Lisette. Kitty has her arm around Lisette and she's whispering to her. Lorenzo is overcome with emotion by the love they share and has tears in his eyes. He taps on the door. They both look up at him.
Sorry, I didn't mean to spy.
It's okay.
Lisette, I want you to be there.
Don't be ridiculous. You're right. I'll just ruin everything.
Kitty needs you there. Hell, I need you there. You two may be a couple, but we're all family and we've got to stick together.
That's very sweet of you.
I know.
He smiles at her.
But how are we going to explain who she is?
I'll think of something. Let's not worry about it now. Come on, I'll cook us dinner.
Lisette hugs Lorenzo. Over her shoulder, she looks at Kitty, who mouths the words, "Thank you," to him. Cut to interior MGM Studios, hair salon the next morning. Starlets are getting beautified in the salon. Kitty sits in a chair with a cape on, reading a magazine as Rita is wrapping her hair in foil. Lorenzo walks over to check on her hair.
How's she cooking, Rita?
She's almost done, boss. I did exactly what you said.
Good, thank you. How'd your nails come out, doll?
Kitty holds her hand out to Lorenzo elegantly.
Rita, I thought I told you pastel pink.
Oh, don't blame me. Your wife insisted on jungle red.
Jungle red? Honestly, Kitty.
Oh, don't be such a drama queen.
Just then, Chip barges into the salon angrily.
How dare you?
The entire salon turns to look at him.
Speaking of drama queens.
How dare you lie to me, Lorenzo, your own best friend?
Chip, what the hell are you talking about? And keep your goddamn voice down, will you?
I will do no such thing. I've been lied to and betrayed, and I'll never forgive you. Hi, yeah, Kitty, your nails look fabulous.
Thank you.
She looks at Lorenzo and raises his eyebrows jokingly.
Chip, I sincerely mean this when I say, what in the hell are you talking about?
I'm talking about the dinner party that I wasn't invited to.
Who told you about that?
Lorenzo looks at Kitty.
I only told Rita.
Rita stops working and turns to Lorenzo.
I only told Lorraine.
Rita looks over at Lorraine, a 60-year-old former showgirl who's let herself go, who's sitting under the dryer with curlers in her hair.
I only told Agnes. Swear to God.
Agnes, a skinny, mousy brown receptionist, pops her head out from a wash basin, dripping water.
And I only told Erica.
Who the hell is Erica?
Erica, the chorus girl, swivels around in her chair.
Oh, is that a secret? Oops.
She stands up and walks to the cashier, handing her a bill. Lorenzo is speechless, but visibly furious.
You were right. Hollywood is a very fickle business.
She saunters out of the salon.
Bitch.
Did you see those gowns?
So what have you got to say for yourself? Are you having a dinner party with Eddie and Liz tonight or not?
I am.
Aha! And am I invited or not?
You are not.
You know, if I hadn't just gotten a manicure, I'd slap you. Rita, slap him for me.
Rita lifts her hand up.
Rita, put your goddamn hand down.
Rita puts her hand down and shrugs.
Chip, I'm sorry, but I just can't have you over tonight.
Why not? Eddie and Liz love me.
It's not them. There's going to be some other people at this party, and I'm afraid that you're just going to be, well, kind of too much. You know what I mean.
Oh, I know what you mean. You mean you're embarrassed of me in front of all your straight friends. I see how it is, Lorenzo.
He gathers his things and walks towards the door.
Chip, you don't understand.
It's okay, Kitty. Let him go.
Chip looks back at them and stares at the doorknob.
Esther, my hands.
Esther, the cashier, rushes over and opens the door for him. He goes through and turns back around.
Slam it, Esther.
Esther slams the door so loudly she scares herself. Everyone goes back to work. Kitty turns to Lorenzo to speak. He puts his hand on her shoulder.
It's fine. I'll buy him something shiny and he'll forget all about it. At least this way he's out of our hair for tonight.
Are you sure? He's probably going to go home and drink himself to oblivion.
How's that different from any other Friday night?
She nods as he's made a good point.
Listen, I'll meet you back at the house. I've got one more thing to get for tonight.
Cut to exterior MGM Studios costume house moments later. Lorenzo walks into the studio marked costumes. A few extras walk out dressed like Martians, astronauts, cowboys, and Indians. Moments later, Lorenzo comes back out with a garment bag. Cut to interior Lorenzo and Kitty's bungalow later that evening.
Absolutely not!
Lisette walks out of the bedroom and Lorenzo is following her.
Just try it on. You're going to look great.
I am not going to meet Elizabeth Taylor wearing that!
It's the only way, Lisette. Otherwise, people will question who you are.
I'd rather kiss a crocodile.
Okay. I'll get my agent on the phone.
Lorenzo goes over to the phone and begins dialing.
Operator, I'd like the Beverly Hills Hotel, please.
What are you doing?
Well, if you don't want to wear it, then I'll just put you up in the hotel until the party's over.
Lisette grabs the garment bag out of Lorenzo's hand and walks down the hall to her room, slamming the door. Lorenzo hangs up the phone.
Va faire enculer, c'est des conneries!
Cut to interior Lorenzo and Kitty's bungalow later that evening. Moments before the party starts, Lorenzo is putting the finishing touches on the house. He walks over to a record player and puts the needle on a record. As the music echoes throughout the house, Lorenzo walks into the kitchen and takes a peek into the oven. He dips his finger into a pot of sauce on the stove and tastes it, pleased with the flavor. He makes his way to the dining room and lights the candles on the table. As he walks by himself in a mirror, he stares at his face for a moment before talking to himself.
Oh, when did you become such an old queen?
Kitty appears in the doorway behind him, looking elegant and gorgeous in a gown. Her hair is freshly dyed and vibrant red. Her face is made up like a movie star.
About 6 months ago, when you stopped putting tonic in your gin.
Catherine, you look absolutely stunning.
I do clean up pretty well, huh?
Come on, give me a twirl.
He spins her around in her dress, flows behind her.
Oh, I almost forgot something.
He goes to the mantel and grabs a box. He hurries back over and hands it to her. She opens it and gasps, a diamond and gold wedding band.
Don't get too excited. It's from the props department, but better late than never.
She kisses him and puts her arms around him, holding him tight.
I wish life was easier, Kitty.
I know. Sometimes I do too, but then we'd be like every other bored, married couple we know.
She fixes his bow tie.
You've made a mess of this.
I know. I'm nervous.
Don't be. It will all be fine, darling.
I hope so. Sweet?
I like honey better.
Okay, honey it is.
The doorbell rings.
Jesus, it's showtime. How do I look?
Like Italian Clark Gable.
The doorbell rings again.
Lisette, the door!
Coming.
Down from the hallway emerges Lisette, who's donning a French maid's costume. She smooths out her apron as she opens the door to reveal Brian O'Sullivan. Brian O'Sullivan is a very handsome Irish-American man with big blue eyes and unruly blonde hair. He appears to be in his early 30s, although he has a childlike innocence to him.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Brian O'Sullivan.
We know who you are. Please come in, sir.
Thank you.
O'Sullivan takes a step into the home and is stunned by its beauty and design. Lorenzo's jaw drops when he sees O'Sullivan and realizes that he is the man in the brown suit from the bar a few days prior. Kitty notices O'Sullivan's hat in his hand and gives Lisette a look.
Oh yeah, may I take your hat?
Yes, thank you.
Lisette opens the closet door and flings the hat in quickly.
Mr. O'Sullivan, how do you do? I'm Lorenzo Lucatelli, and this is my wife, Catherine.
Pleasure to meet you both. This is a very beautiful home you have.
Thank you. That's very nice of you.
I know you probably want to get down to business, Mr. O'Sullivan, but may I offer you a cocktail?
No thanks. I don't drink when I'm working.
Oh, well, do you mind if we have one? We usually take our cocktails in the parlor before dinner.
They all walk into the parlor.
I don't mind at all. I'll take a cold pop if you got one.
Lisette, a Coke for our guest. Kitty will have a champagne and I'll take my usual.
Lisette begrudgingly walks to the bar, muttering to herself in French.
Are things always this fancy around here?
O'Sullivan sits alone on the sofa. Kitty and Lorenzo each sit in a club chair.
Somewhat, I'd say, but tonight's extra special. We're having a small dinner party. Our anniversary is on Sunday.
I must say, Mr. Lucatelli, for an Italian immigrant, I don't detect much of an accent.
Oh, I have Stella Adler to thank for that. When I first arrived here, I wanted to be an actor. I took classes to sound more American.
The accent still comes out when he's mad enough.
Or drunk enough.
He leans back towards the bar.
What was that?
Lisette turns around with a tray of cocktails.
Here are your drinks.
Lisette hands Kitty a champagne and O'Sullivan a Coke. She places a gin martini in front of Lorenzo.
Lisette, what is this?
Your usual. A gin martini.
I think you must be confused. I always drink bourbon.
You.
Kitty makes eyes at Lisette.
I mean, how could I be so silly? Yes, of course. Bourbon, my mistake. The martini was actually for me.
She removes the martini and takes a swig. Lorenzo awkwardly smiles at O'Sullivan.
She's not the best bartender, but she's a hell of a cook.
Lisette returns with the drink.
Here we are. Bourbon on the rocks.
Thank you.
Are you sure you wouldn't like anything else, Mr. O'Sullivan?
Oh, no thank you. Lisette, was it?
Yes, sir.
May I ask where you're from?
Passaic, New Jersey.
Lorenzo sprays his drink out all over himself. He pulls out his handkerchief and wipes himself.
I'm sorry, Mr. O'Sullivan. She's kidding.
No, I'm not. I was born in Passaic, New Jersey. My father was a cargo pilot, and he met my mother on a flight to Alsace. He took her back to New Jersey, and then we all moved back to France when I was 2. They both died during the war, so I came back here to find my father's sister in Thousand Oaks.
I had no idea.
I did. She told me when I hired her.
Would you like to see my birth certificate?
Oh, no, that's all right.
She gestures to Lorenzo.
Oh, I was talking to him.
That'll be all for now, Lisette.
She walks into the kitchen.
I must say, yours is a very interesting case, Mr. Lucatelli.
He pulls out a notepad and pencil and begins to read.
It is? How so?
Well, it appears you entered through Ellis Island 17 years ago.
That I did.
And you didn't apply for a work visa or file any taxes for 6 years after that.
Well, I worked for my Uncle Carmine. He had a farm in Modesto. Horrific place. But he gave me room and board in exchange for work.
I see. And when you finally did apply for a work visa, it got approved through the movie studio.
Yes, I had been offered a job doing hair on a movie. They filmed some B movie near the farm and they hired me to do the hair. I was always good with hair. My father was a barber in Italy before the war.
Well, it appears your work visa expired in 1956, and MGM had denied sponsorship, and not soon after, you married Catherine.
Correct?
You can see how that would look suspicious. 2 months before you were about to be deported, you eloped with Catherine.
Mr. O'Sullivan, I know what you're getting at, and I know it does appear suspicious, but I'll explain it to you simply. Yes, my work visa was about to expire. MGM had me contracted for a 3-picture deal, but then they fell through. They assured me that they would sponsor me to remain in the country, and I'd be working again in no time. I didn't marry Kitty because I needed to. I married her because I wanted to. I love her.
He reaches out and holds Kitty's hand.
I love you too, darling.
Besides, that was 3 years ago. Isn't the INS a little late to be investigating this now? I've made 12 pictures since then.
Unfortunately, the United States government doesn't work as fast as Hollywood, Mr. Lucatelli.
Well, that's too bad for them.
Lorenzo leans back in his chair and crosses his legs. He seems relaxed and confident. As his arms hang, his wrists relax limply.
So the reports of you being a homosexual are untrue?
Lorenzo jolts up and uncrosses his legs and straightens his arms.
What was that?
You're not a homosexual.
Homosexual? Oh, no, of course not. I'm Italian. Lisette, another drink, please.
He shakes his glass at her and the ice rattles. Lisette walks over with the bottle of bourbon and pours it into his glass. He motions for her to keep going until it's nearly overflowing.
I'm sorry to ask, but several colleagues of yours have implied some tendencies that would lead me to believe you were.
Colleagues of his?
That's preposterous. Whoever you talk to weren't colleagues of mine. Clearly they are rivals who are jealous of my success. You see, Hollywood is a very cutthroat town, Mr. O'Sullivan. People will do just about anything to get their way into the picture business.
Like lie about their sexuality to get a work visa?
Honestly, Mr. O'Sullivan, I'm insulted.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to insult you. You must understand I'm just doing my job.
We understand, Mr. O'Sullivan, but I can assure you that my husband and I have a legitimate marriage full of love and happiness.
Why not any children?
Excuse me?
3 years, no children. Seems kind of odd. You're both Catholics, am I right?
Kitty can't. She was thrown from a horse on her parents' ranch in Petaluma when she was 19. She's lucky she's able to walk.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you have any more questions, Mr. O'Sullivan, you might as well get them out now before the rest of our guests arrive.
Well, as a matter of fact, I do. What's Mrs. Lucatelli's favorite color?
Blue. It matches her eyes.
Her favorite food?
Apple pie, although she can't bake one because her mother never taught her how.
O'Sullivan turns to Kitty.
What's Mr. Lucatelli's most annoying habit?
Oh, that's easy. He's a know-it-all, and he drinks too much.
What's his favorite book?
The Great Gatsby. He reads it every summer.
What's his favorite movie?
A Star is Born.
Lorenzo puts his hand over his eyes.
I'm sorry, that's my favorite movie. His is Rear Window. I think the champagne is getting to me. If you'll excuse me, I'll go and check on dinner.
Kitty gets up and goes into the kitchen. Lorenzo stares at O'Sullivan, wanting to say something, but keeping a tight lip. Cut to interior Lorenzo and Kitty's kitchen moments later. Lisette is looking frantic as pots are bubbling and smoke is coming out of the oven. Kitty walks in anxiously and opens a cabinet, pulling out a jar of aspirin. She pops a few aspirin in her mouth and opens the fridge, grabbing an open bottle of champagne. She drinks straight from the bottle, washing the pills down. As she goes to return the bottle to the fridge, Lorenzo walks into the kitchen and grabs it out of her hand.
Oh, God, give me that.
Lorenzo chugs the champagne straight from the bottle.
A Star is Born? Oh, what was I thinking? I'm sorry.
It's fine, you recovered.
How about you with that story about me falling off a horse? Where the hell did that come from?
I have no idea. I think it was a movie I worked on.
Who the hell did he talk to at MGM?
It doesn't matter. We're doing fine. Once Elizabeth and Eddie get here, they'll distract him. We just have to get through the dinner.
Funny you should mention about the dinner.
Why? What happened?
I think I burnt it.
Lorenzo opens the oven door and a cloud of smoke comes out. Kitty gets a towel and fans the kitchen.
What the hell did you do? I prepared a beautiful feast. I just told you to keep it warm.
I'm sorry. I don't really know how to use the oven or the stove. The sauce turned into some kind of goopy mess.
Lorenzo pulls a spoon out of a pot on the stove to reveal a clumpy brown sauce.
My Bordelaise! I don't understand. You work in a French restaurant, for Christ's sake.
I write the specials and the menus. I can't cook. I'm an artist.
Well, you're going to be a starving artist because this looks inedible. What are we going to do?
He grabs the bottle of champagne and chugs a little more.
It's okay. You can fix this. Just whip something up. I once saw you throw an entire dinner party with nothing in the pantry but an onion and a hunk of cheese.
Onion soup party. That was a fun one.
Not now, Lisette.
All right. We've got to get through this. You go back out there and charm him. I'll help Picasso try to salvage this meal.
Cut to interior living room seconds later. O'Sullivan is walking around the living room, observing details and objects. He thumbs through some albums by the record player. He picks up a cigarette case as Kitty walks in.
Would you like a cigarette, Mr. O'Sullivan?
No thanks. I don't smoke.
You don't drink and you don't smoke. How do you have any fun?
What could be more fun than a party in the Hollywood Hills?
A loud crash is heard coming from the kitchen and Lorenzo screams.
God damn it, woman!
Kitty leans back and shouts nervously.
Everything okay in there, honey?
Lisette pokes her head out from the kitchen door.
We'll be right out. It's going to be just delicious.
Lorenzo's hand reaches through and pulls her back into the kitchen. Cut to interior kitchen, same moment.
She was talking to me, honey.
Oh, crap. I forgot, sorry.
The doorbell rings.
Oh, thank God. That's Eddie and Liz. Go open it.
Me? I'm too nervous. You go.
She looks at her reflection in the toaster and begins primping. Lorenzo grabs her shoulders and pushes her out the kitchen door into the living room.
Answer the damn door.
Cut to interior living room, same moment. Lisette comes barreling through the door that Lorenzo just pushed her through.
Did I hear the door? I'll get it.
Lisette nervously walks over to the door and opens it slowly to reveal Eddie.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Fisher.
Well, hello there, Lisette. Nice outfit.
Thank you. May I take your coat and hat?
I don't have a coat nor a hat.
I see that now.
Lisette walks back into the house. Eddie follows her. Lorenzo walks out of the kitchen.
Eddie, how good of you to make it.
He hugs Eddie and whispers into his ear.
Where the hell is Elizabeth?
She's still shooting, and she probably won't make it, kid. I'm sorry.
Jesus, we're screwed.
Eddie walks in and gives Kitty a peck on the cheek.
Mr. O'Sullivan, allow me to introduce you to a film and television superstar, Eddie Fisher.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Hello.
The two men shake hands.
Mr. Fisher works with me over at MGM. He's a big star down there.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, Lorenzo.
Neither would I.
The handshake ends abruptly.
Would you like a drink, Eddie?
No, sure. How about a bourbon and water?
Kitty turns to the maid.
Lisette?
Oh, no thanks. I have a glass of champagne in the kitchen.
Kitty makes eyes at her. Lorenzo lets out a giant fake laugh.
Oh, Lisette, you're quite the comedian. Now run along and fetch Mr. Fisher his drink.
He grabs her strongly by the arm and flings her to the bar as she looks back at him with disdain. She begins making Eddie his drink.
Kitty, do you remember where I left my cigarettes? Was it in the bedroom?
I'm not sure, darling. Do you want me to go look?
Let's go look together.
They both walk off to the bedroom. Lorenzo walks in one door, but Kitty seems to be making her way towards another. Lorenzo quickly realizes that she's heading to her bedroom and jerks her by the arm into his room. Cut to interior Lorenzo's bedroom moments later. Lorenzo is pacing back and forth while Kitty sits on the bed. They have a conversation in a whisper.
This is a nightmare.
It's not that bad.
All we have for dinner is eggs and cocktail olives.
Oh, Christ, that is bad.
And you know what else? I've seen this guy before. A couple of nights ago I mistook him for my blind date.
You didn't hit on him, did you?
No, but I didn't do for myself any favors.
You think he's been following you?
I don't know. There's something about him, though. I can't quite figure it out. He doesn't seem to be too impressed by Eddie at all.
He doesn't seem to be too impressed by anything. What do I have to do to get him to liven up? Pull my tits out and do the dance from the Seven Veils?
That's not a bad idea.
I'd rather have you go back to Italy.
No, not you. I have an idea. Go out there and distract them. I've got to make a phone call.
Okay.
Kitty runs back out to the party and Lorenzo grabs the phone. He dials frantically.
Hi, Rita. It's me. Rita, I need a big favor. You have any chorus girls in the salon? I need a distraction.
Fade to interior Lorenzo and Kitty's living room moments later. Lorenzo enters back into the room holding a cigarette.
Found them.
Eddie leans over and lights the cigarette for him.
So, Mr. O'Sullivan, what line of work are you in?
I work for the government, Immigration and Naturalization Services.
Well, that sounds just fascinating.
Truth is, Eddie, that Mr. O'Sullivan is here to inspect Kitty and my marriage.
You and Kitty. But they're the real deal. You know, look, Mr. O'Sullivan, I've known these two kids a long time, and believe me, there are tons of sham marriages in Hollywood, but these ain't one of them.
I'm simply doing my job, Mr. Fisher. Whenever a citizen marries a foreigner, the government does like to follow up just to ensure the validity of the marriage.
They're valid, all right. I was there. You know, she was a knockout. You should have seen the dress she wore.
Yes, Dior, I've heard.
Lorenzo nervously slurps down his drink.
Dinner!
They all pop up, relieved to have something to break the ice.
Oh, thank God, I'm starving.
They all make their way to the dining room table. Lorenzo is about to seat himself when he realizes he should pull out a chair for Kitty. Lisette emerges from the kitchen and places a dish in front of each guest, a plain omelet with a sprig of parsley. They all look down at their plates with confusion.
Gee, is it morning already?
Well, you know, Eddie, it's very French to have an omelet for dinner.
Oh, well, what do you have for breakfast? Roast beef and potatoes?
Lorenzo makes angry eyes at Eddie. Lisette returns from the kitchen and places a basket of toast on the table.
Oh, it's a theme party. Oh, someone should have told me, or I would have worn pajamas.
Lorenzo kicks him under the table.
Oh, I mean, sure, it looks delicious.
They have these kinds of parties in Paris all the time. I believe they call it œuf nuit.
I've read about that. Very bohemian.
Well, bon appetit, everyone.
They all begin eating their omelets in silence. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. Kitty looks at Lorenzo curiously.
I wonder who that could be.
Well, maybe it's Mrs. Fisher, able to make it after all.
The doorbell rings again.
Lisette, the door.
Lisette doesn't answer. The doorbell rings again.
Lisette?
Lorenzo gets up and opens the kitchen door to reveal Lisette eating an omelet.
I can't drink on an empty stomach.
Lorenzo angrily lets the kitchen door swing closed and turns around to answer the door himself.
Never mind, I'll get it myself.
Lorenzo opens the door with a smile on his face, expecting Elizabeth.
Well, you made it after all.
As Lorenzo opens the door, his smile quickly turns into a look of panic as he realizes that standing in the doorway is Chip in a drunken state. Lorenzo gasps and clutches his chest, then quickly realizes how feminine he looks and straightens up.
Chip, what the hell are you doing here?
I could ask you the very same thing. How could Lorenzo Lonzarelli not invite me to your dinner party?
Chip, you're as drunk as a skunk.
How dare you? I've never seen a drunk skunk in my life.
Chip barges in and Lorenzo chases after him.
Chip, calm down. I can explain.
I don't want an explanation. I want to rob Roy.
Chip walks into the dining room and sees the group at the table.
Who the hell are these people?
Kitty immediately stands up.
Chip, what an unexpected surprise. What's going on?
What's going on? What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on, Kitty. I'm heartbroken. Heartbroken, I tell you, that I was not included in this clearly boring dinner party.
Who is this person?
This person? Well, this is Chip Matthews. Chip, this is Mr. Brian O'Sullivan. He's with the INS.
Chip inspects him up and down with his eyes.
I'll be the judge of that.
I'm sorry, what is his relationship to you, Mr. Ligatelli?
Everyone stares at Lorenzo.
His relationship? Why, he's a dear friend who just happens to be, well, he happens to be...
Lisette emerges from the kitchen with a tray of deviled eggs and Lorenzo's eyes light up.
He happens to be Lisette's fiancé.
Quoi?
What?
Exactly.
That's right. We know all about your secret affair with Lisette, and you don't have to hide it any longer. The cat's out of the bag.
There's a cat in the bag.
It's an expression.
Americans.
Yes, you no longer have to hide your love for each other. We know all too well that love knows no boundaries. In fact, let's celebrate. Come to the kitchen. I've got some champagne on ice.
I'll help you.
Lorenzo and Kitty push Chip and Lisette into the kitchen. Lisette and Chip seem very confused and begin shouting.
Qu'est-ce qui se
But I
passe,
want
Maître?
champagne.
Je
Don't
passe
push
pour
me,
cette
Lorenzo!
Lorenzo grabs him by the wrists and flings him into the kitchen. Chip lets out a very effeminate howl. Cut to interior kitchen seconds later. The kitchen door swings open and Lorenzo, Kitty, and Lisette and Chip all come through in a cluster.
Lorenzo, what the hell is going on? I was supposed to meet Elizabeth Taylor, and now you've got me to engage to Scarlett O'Hara?
Well, I know the French are known for the rudeness, but that was uncalled for.
Will you two both shut up and listen to me? Chip, the reason I didn't invite you tonight was because Mr. O'Sullivan is an inspector for the government here to question my marriage to Kitty. And if he suspects the marriage is a sham, he's going to deport me back to Italy.
That queen? In the bad suit?
Chip peers back through the crack in the door.
He's not one of us, Chip. He's straight. Are you hearing me?
Chip turns back around.
I hear you. But that man is as queer than Christmas at Liberace's.
That's the same thing you said about Bill Holden before I wound up with a black eye.
Okay, that may have been wishful thinking, but I'm usually right.
Oh, Christ, I'm done for it. Kitty, give me a drink.
Listen to me, both of you. We have a lot riding on this dinner, so please, for our sake, can you just pretend to be engaged for an hour so he doesn't get suspicious?
You want me to pretend to be engaged to a man? I don't know if I pull it off, but I'm just not that kind of lady.
You, sir, are no lady.
Chip takes a swig of champagne. Lorenzo grabs the bottle out of his hand.
Give me that. Kitty, get him some coffee.
Lorenzo grabs Chip by the lapels and gets in his face.
Listen to me. I've done a lot for you, haven't I? Who went to bat for you at the studio? Who insisted you get treated with respect at Chasen's? Not to mention the incident in Palm Springs I covered up for you.
That busboy said he was 18.
Lorenzo shakes Chip by the shoulders.
You were going to march back out there and pretend for a few minutes that you were madly in love with my wife's French girlfriend.
Lorenzo, you know I love you, but who are we kidding? There's no way I can pass it straight.
What are you talking about? You're married.
Oh yeah, my loving Doris. Forgot about her.
Please, Chip, just don't speak and try not to move. Lisette?
Fine, but you really own me.
I will send you and Kitty to Ohio for the weekend, all on me.
Can we take the Cadillac?
Fine. Mon amour.
She throws her arms around Chip. Cut to interior dining room, same moment. O'Sullivan and Eddie remain sitting at the table eating their omelets.
Don't you find this all a bit strange?
Come to my house.
Lorenzo and Kitty emerge from the kitchen carrying champagne, followed by Lisette and Chip, who are arm in arm.
Well, everyone, they've finally admitted what we've always known. It looks like after tonight, Lisette will be leaving us and marrying our good friend, Mr. Matthews.
The cat has escaped from the suitcase.
Lorenzo shakes his head.
Well, congratulations. I hope you're very happy together.
I hope so too.
They all raise a glass to toast. Then Chip, in his most macho tone, grabs Lisette by the waist and pulls her in for a kiss.
Give me some sugar, baby.
Everyone cringes as they watch them kiss. Lisette's eyes are open and she looks as if she's in a state of shock.
When's the big day?
Oh, we haven't picked a date yet. Probably sometime this fall.
Fall? Oh no, I've always envisioned a spring wedding. When peonies bloom, I have to have peonies at my wedding.
Take it easy on the floral talk, Mary.
Of course, if my baby wants fall, then fall it'll be.
He puts his arms around her.
I'm just the luckiest man in the world. I could die of happiness.
Lisette speaks through a frozen smile.
Please do.
Well, all this excitement has certainly built up my appetite. Would anyone else like more eggs?
Oh yes, I'd love some.
I'll be right back with more, darling.
Don't be too long, lover.
He slaps Lisette on the rear as she goes back into the kitchen. She turns to look at him with disgust.
Isn't that just adorable? Kind of reminds me of when we first started courting, doesn't it, dear?
Lorenzo reaches out to hold Kitty's hand.
Certainly does.
Kitty turns her attention to O'Sullivan.
Are you married, Mr. O'Sullivan?
Oh, no, unfortunately I'm not. I'm married to my job mostly.
Do you enjoy working for the government? I would think it would be tedious.
It's had its moments, but then I get to go out into the world and do things like this and meet people like you.
People like us?
Chip, Mr. O'Sullivan means people such as ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
Whereabouts do you live, Mr. O'Sullivan? You look awfully familiar to me.
Los Feliz.
Chip leans in close to his face.
Have you ever been to the Screaming Eagle? It's kind of a juke joint on Havenhurst.
No, I can't say that I have.
Interesting. Me neither.
Chip backs away slowly. Lisette returns with the food.
Here we are, my specialty, eggs a la Lisette.
She puts down a plate of scrambled eggs covered with cocktail olives.
What do you've got back there? Chicken?
Well, I think this looks absolutely divine, darling.
Lisette stares at him, confused.
What I mean to say is that it looks good, babe. Now get over here and lay one on me.
Chip grabs Lisette and plants another big kiss on her. They're both clearly uncomfortable and awkward. The doorbell rings. Chip is startled and lets out a yell.
What the hell is that?
It's the doorbell, you idiot.
Oh, sorry. For a moment it sounded exactly like my Aunt Alice.
Boy, what the hell did you drink?
The ocean.
The doorbell rings again.
Lisette, the door.
Lisette looks at him angrily and mutters under her breath.
Lorenzo, the window.
She motions for him to jump out of it, and his eyes flare at her. She walks over to the door and opens it to reveal Veronica and Nancy. Veronica is a sexy but brash brunette from Brooklyn. Nancy is an adorable ingenue with a soft voice and a thick southern accent. Their hair and makeup are perfect, and they're dressed in glamorous and sexy cocktail dresses.
Hi, girls, how are you?
Lorenzo goes over to kiss the girls hello.
I hope you don't mind, Mr. O'Sullivan. I invited some of the chorus girls from a new picture we're working on. This is Nancy, and this here is Veronica. Ladies, this is Mr. O'Sullivan. You know my wife Kitty, and the fellas?
As Lorenzo goes to close the door, Rita and Lorraine from the salon appear. Like the two ladies before them, their hair and makeup are flawless, but as they are postmenopausal, they fill out the cocktail gowns in a different way.
What the hell are you two doing here?
Well, you said you needed a distraction, so me and Lorraine thought we'd come and distract.
I said I needed a good distraction. You two look like you've been walking the boulevard all night.
Are you kidding? With these bunions, I could barely walk up the driveway.
Oh, Jesus. Get in the goddamn house, Lorraine.
Lorenzo helps Lorraine hobble into the foyer. He stops and looks at Rita.
Where did you get those clothes?
Oh, about that. I promised Irma from wardrobe we'd touch up her roots free for a year.
A year?
This is real silk.
Rita walks into the party and greets everyone. Lorenzo goes to close the door, but a hand holds it open. Erica walks through the foyer in a stunning cocktail dress. Lorenzo's eyes flare up with fear and rage.
You! What are you doing here?
I went back to the salon to get my gloves, and the girls just so happened to be talking about coming to a dinner party at your house. Something about fooling the government so you wouldn't get deported? Naturally, I couldn't miss that for the world.
Get the hell out of my house before I throw you out!
You lay a hand on me and everyone from here to eternity will know your dirty little secret.
Why are you doing this? What do you want?
What do I want?
She throws her wrap and purse on a chair and glides into the room.
Well, I'll start with a drink.
She turns to the crowd.
Hi, everyone.
Suddenly the party has taken on a new life with everyone talking and laughing. Lorenzo nervously walks through his living room. As Lorenzo travels through the party, he witnesses all of the interactions. Nancy holds her hand out to O'Sullivan to kiss.
Charmed to make your acquaintance.
O'Sullivan kisses her hand gently.
Very nice to meet you as well. I just love your accent. Where are you from?
Just got here from Savannah last month. But MGM's got me enrolled in dialect classes so I could sound more, what was the word again, Veronica?
She turns to Veronica, who is popping cocktail olives into her mouth.
Worldly. They want us to sound more worldly, whatever that means. Have you got any beer?
Veronica walks into the kitchen. She passes Chip, who's telling Eddie and Lorraine a story. Lisette is pouring Rita a glass of champagne and then pours one for herself. Lorenzo walks to the bar to make himself a cocktail, and Kitty joins him.
What is she doing here?
Lorenzo pours himself a huge drink and chugs it down. He refills the glass, and Kitty grabs it and chugs down one herself.
I don't know. I told Rita to bring the girls in the shop to distract O'Sullivan. I didn't know she was in there. Of all the salons in the world, she had to walk into mine.
Kitty refills his glass. He downs another one.
Give her a reason to play along. Promise to use your power to make her a star if she keeps her mouth shut.
You think it'll work?
What choice do we have? Let's see if she's as good an actress as she thinks she is.
Okay, I'll grab her and bring her to the kitchen.
You better hurry.
Kitty motions with her head, and Lorenzo turns to see Erica introducing herself to O'Sullivan.
Christ on the cross.
Lorenzo rushes over right as Erica is seating herself next to O'Sullivan.
Erica, darling, why don't I give you a tour of the house? I don't believe you've been here.
You can give it to me later. I want to get more acquainted with Mr. Sullivan here.
She smiles at him.
Oh, what?
Sullivan.
Erica lets out a fake laugh as she puts her hand on O'Sullivan's knee. He becomes noticeably uncomfortable.
What beautiful eyes you have, Mr. O'Sullivan.
Thank you.
Doesn't he have beautiful eyes, Lorenzo?
Yes, he does. Very blue.
Lorenzo looks across the room at Kitty and motions for her to help.
And the cutest little dimples.
She puts her finger in O'Sullivan's dimples.
Gee, stop. You're gonna make me blush.
Yeah, stop.
Erica glares at Lorenzo, knowing she's getting to him.
How long have you known Lorenzo?
Oh, we just met tonight.
Is that so? How interesting. I myself have known him for quite a while. Why, just today he was doing my hair for a variety show I was supposed to be on.
Oh, is that so?
Lorenzo becomes panicked and looks at Kitty for answers. Kitty looks around the room and her eyes light up. As he's telling his story to Eddie and Lorraine, Kitty removes an ice cube from her glass and slowly places it down the shirt of an unsuspecting Chip. Chip screams with panic and spills his Rob Roy all over O'Sullivan and Erica, who jump up from their seats. Chip continues to squeal as he tries to reach the back of his shirt. Lorraine and Eddie attempt to help but are hysterical with laughter, as is Kitty and Lisette. Lorenzo is incredibly relieved as Erica scowls.
Chip, calm down. It was just a joke.
A joke? You know how sensitive my skin is.
Yeah, as sensitive as my eardrums. Will you pipe down?
Lisette rushes over.
Oh, come, my love, I will help you.
She takes him to the bathroom. As he walks, he fidgets as the ice cube is making its way down his back.
But my darling, I don't want you to see me until our wedding.
We assume the ice cube has traveled south as Chip hits a high note on the final word.
Night!
The whole crowd erupts with laughter. Kitty grabs Erica by the upper arm.
Come with me, dear. There's another powder room down the hall.
She pulls her arm forcefully into the bedroom.
Lorenzo, darling, won't you help Mr. O'Sullivan?
Kitty and Erica walk off into the bedroom.
Brian, come with me. I'll get you a new shirt.
Cut to interior Lorenzo's bedroom moments later. Lorenzo is fussing through his closet, pulling out shirts and jackets as he looks for something for O'Sullivan to wear.
It's really not a big deal, Lorenzo. Anything will do.
I can assure you when it comes to fashion, most certainly anything will not do, Mr. O'Sullivan. Trust me, I'm Italian.
All right, well, in that case, I'll take a tuxedo jacket if you've got one. Tired of always being the most underdressed man at a party.
That a boy. Now, remove that wet shirt. I'll have Lisette send it out for you in the morning.
O'Sullivan removes his jacket and then his shirt to reveal a toned and fit physique. Lorenzo can't help but notice as it stops him in his tracks, literally. He doesn't know where to focus his vision as he tries not to stare and hands him a crisp, clean shirt.
This one should do.
Lorenzo hands O'Sullivan a tuxedo shirt. O'Sullivan puts it on.
I've never actually worn one of these before.
Never.
Working for the government doesn't afford you a lot of black tie invitations.
I remember the first time I wore one. It wasn't that long ago. I was so excited to put it on. The only suit I ever owned in Italy was green wool, and I think they took it off my Uncle Enzo before they buried him.
O'Sullivan laughs at the joke as he buttons up his shirt and looks up at Lorenzo smiling. Lorenzo looks at him lovingly, then catches himself and snaps out of it.
Well, we will have to have you over again for the next dinner party. You can bring your friend Linda.
Who?
Lorenzo helps him put on the dinner jacket.
That was her name, wasn't it? In the cafe the other day?
Oh, her. You remembered me.
O'Sullivan seems bashful as Lorenzo hands him a bow tie.
A friend set me up with her. It wasn't a match.
Lorenzo nods.
I've been there.
Lorenzo moves face to face with him as he fixes his collar and ties his tie.
Well, when you find a match, you're more than welcome to bring them as your guest. And until then, you can come back on your own. Keep the tux.
Lorenzo gives him a smile and a wink. O'Sullivan looks into Lorenzo's eyes and realizes how sweet he is.
This is very kind of you, Lorenzo.
Hush now, you're a guest in my home. It's the least I could do.
I remembered you too.
Lorenzo finishes tying the tie and looks up into O'Sullivan's eyes. They share the briefest of moments when their eyes lock. Nervously, Lorenzo turns away and walks to the vanity. He returns with a tube of Brill cream and a comb.
Now, there's just one more thing. You've got to let me get my hands on that hair.
Cut to interior Lorenzo and Kitty's living room a few minutes later. Lorraine and Eddie are dancing together in the living room while the other guests watch and laugh. Chip is at the bar fixing himself a drink as Lisette walks around with a tray of meringues. Lorenzo emerges from his room, followed by O'Sullivan, who looks transformed into movie star material with his tuxedo and beautifully coiffed pompadour. Chip's eyes light up with excitement when he sees O'Sullivan enter the room.
Eliza Doolittle, you clean up well.
Lorenzo scowls at him.
I mean to say, I'm so sorry about the spill, Mr. O'Sullivan, but I'm glad you found a suitable attire. Very glad.
O'Sullivan takes a meringue and begins to chat with Lisette. Lorenzo continues to scowl as he walks over to the bar. As Lorenzo approaches the bar, Chip whispers to him.
What did you do to him? He looks like a different person.
Honestly, not much. I just put him in an old tux and gave him a little Brill cream.
Well, a little dab will do you, all right?
Will you quit it?
You've got to stop worrying so much, Lorenzo. You're giving yourself all sorts of lines on your face. You look like an aerial map of Tucson.
How can I not worry, you drunk buffoon? Turns out the only available man in town with beauty, brains, and a sense of humor is the inspector who's trying to send me back to Italy for being a fraud. Not to mention there's a bimbo in my bathroom who's about to expose this whole charade. That is, if I don't first.
Lorenzo looks over at O'Sullivan lovingly. O'Sullivan speaks to Nancy and Veronica and looks up momentarily to smile back at him.
Well, my fair lady, don't tell me you have the hots for Uncle Sam's favorite nephew.
I thought we had a moment, but I don't know. Maybe he's just messing with me so he can get me out of the country.
Lorenzo, I'm telling you, there's something about him that tells me he's hiding just as much as we are.
Chip aggressively bats his eyes at O'Sullivan, who looks back at him confused.
I wish. Even if he was, he's still the enemy. What kind of man spends his life judging the character of others?
Chip gives him an all-knowing look as if to say, we do.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Lorenzo pours himself a drink and knocks it back down his throat in one shot.
God, that's disgusting. How do they do that in the movies?
Kitty and Erica return from the powder room, freshly made up. Lorenzo tenses up as Erica makes her way over to O'Sullivan. Kitty walks over to the bar and puts her hand on Lorenzo's arm.
Don't worry, I took care of it.
Took care of it? What did you do? What's she saying to him?
She's telling him that the reason she acts so cold to you is that you made love to her and never called her again.
I what?
Lorenzo, how could you?
Will you shut up? I did no such thing. Kitty, why would you tell him that? What did you promise her?
In exchange for her keeping her mouth shut and playing our little game tonight. All she wanted was just one teensy little solo number in Eddie's variety show.
Her own number?
He realizes how loud he is and softens his voice.
Her own number? Are you out of your mind?
Lorenzo, it's the only way. It's the only thing she said would keep her from telling him anything.
But a number? How are we going to pull that off?
Like this, a 5, 6, 7, 8.
Chip begins to dance with the champagne bottle.
Cut that out!
Chip makes an "I'm sorry" gesture. Kitty puts her arm around her husband.
Don't worry, I'll talk to Eddie. He owes us. After all, you did the hair for both of his weddings.
But the studio...
The studio will be fine. I'm a writer. I'll write her into the show.
What if she has no talent?
Since when did you need talent to be on television?
Lorenzo is about to say something to Chip and then reconsiders.
He makes a good point.
I promise you, it's going to work out.
If you say so.
Now this is the part where you thank your wife for her masterful work.
Thank you, honey.
He gives her a kiss on the cheek. They look over and see Erica flirting with O'Sullivan.
Oh, and I told her if she gets him to go home with her, then you'll ask Stanley to give her a couple close-ups.
They all stare at O'Sullivan.
20 says she's more likely to go home with me.
Chip seems to think Mr. O'Sullivan is a bit of a sheep in wolf's clothing.
Kitty cocks her head.
I did think I caught him staring at my shoes.
Chip makes a face toward Lorenzo. Lorenzo grabs a bottle of champagne and begins to open it.
Okay, say you're right, and I'm not saying you are. I'm only entertaining the idea. How would we find out? How would we know for sure?
At that exact moment, the doorbell rings. As Lisette opens the door, she's frozen in shock to reveal Elizabeth Taylor herself. Elizabeth is perfection in appearance and wears a beautiful silk cocktail gown with a glorious mink draped over her shoulders.
You're...
O'Sullivan gasps and clutches his chest as he's completely starstruck.
Elizabeth Taylor.
Upon witnessing O'Sullivan's moment of excitement, Lorenzo lets the cork pop and champagne sprays all over Chip. All eyes turn to Elizabeth as Lorenzo's eyes are fixated on O'Sullivan. Eddie rushes to the door to greet his wife with a kiss.
Oh, sweetheart, I thought you weren't coming.
And insult the only man in town I trust to dye my roots? Never.
She turns to Lisette, who's standing in shock.
Vodka and tonic, honey. Thanks.
She throws her wrap into Lisette's frozen hands as she makes her way into the room. Lorenzo rushes over to greet her.
Elizabeth, so good to see you. Thank you for coming. You look marvelous.
Lorenzo kisses her hello.
That's the only woman in California who can pull off a mixed stroll in the middle of June.
Elizabeth, allow me to introduce you to everyone. These young ladies are dancers at MGM. This is Nancy and Veronica.
How do you do?
Pleasure to make your acquaintance.
Nice dress.
And these young ladies you might recognize from the salon.
He motions to Rita and Lorraine.
Hi, I'm Miss Taylor. You look beautiful as always.
Why, so do you, Rita. Lorraine. How's old George doing? Oh, he's probably passed out in an easy chair in front of the television. How charming.
Of course you remember my wife, Catherine.
Kitty nervously shakes Elizabeth's hand.
Elizabeth, welcome to our home.
Why, Kitty, you should wear your hair like that more. You look stunning.
Thank you. Lorenzo did it, of course.
Oh, how it pays to have a husband with useful skill. All mine seems to do is bang on the piano all day long.
Hey, at least get me a drink before you insult me.
And of course you know Chip.
Chip is wiping off the champagne that's sprayed all over him. As he wipes his face, he reveals a napkin covered in makeup. Elizabeth smiles and blows him a kiss.
Hey, girl.
And this is our new friend, Brian O'Sullivan.
Well, any friend of Lorenzo is certainly a friend of mine. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. O'Sullivan.
They all take a seat. Elizabeth sits on a chair. Chip walks over and sits in between Lorenzo and O'Sullivan.
The pleasure is all mine, Miss Taylor. I'm a huge fan. I simply adore you. I've seen everything you've ever done, honestly. I've seen The Giant 5 times. Tell me, what's Rock Hudson really like?
Just as Chip is about to interject with a quip about Rock Hudson, Lorenzo quickly grabs a deviled egg off the table and shoves it into his mouth.
Have you had one of these eggs, Chip? They're delicious.
Chip angrily chews the egg as Lorenzo shoos him away. Lisette brings Elizabeth her cocktail.
Vodka and tonic. Thank you.
Lisette remains standing and watches Elizabeth as she sips her drink. Elizabeth notices her staring.
Don't worry, honey. I'll let you know when I need another one.
You know what? I think I'll have that drink now.
What can I get for you?
I'll take a martini up with a twist. Gin.
Upon hearing the word gin, Lorenzo immediately turns to look at O'Sullivan with a gleam of hope in his eyes. Elizabeth leans in close to Lorenzo to whisper to him softly.
Eddie told me everything. Is this the schmuck Uncle Sam sent?
Yes, dear, but he's no schmuck.
Don't worry. I'll take care of it.
Are you sure? You don't have to.
No, honey. I'm delighted to.
Elizabeth stands up.
May I have everyone's attention, please? I'd like to propose a toast. To our very gracious hosts and the epitome of love and commitment. There's no couple I know that deserves each other more. To Lorenzo and Kitty, happy anniversary, darlings.
Everyone raises a glass and toasts as Kitty kisses Lorenzo on the cheek. A look of relief comes across Lorenzo's face as he winks at Elizabeth. Fade to interior Lorenzo and Kitty's bungalow later that evening. A few hours have passed and the party is livened up. Through a puff of smoke, Elizabeth is finishing a story.
Of course, when television becomes colorized, the whole picture business is over.
Oh, don't say that, Miss Taylor.
It's true. You think people are going to want to go to a picture when they can stay home and watch a color television?
They will when they see the color of Lucille Ball's hair.
O'Sullivan laughs.
You kid, but it's true. No one wants to go to a movie theater anymore.
Well, I do.
So do I. I love going to the movies. That's the whole reason I got into this industry. There's something about a theater.
I know what you mean. Every Sunday, my Grandpa Joe would take me down to the picture house we had in our town, and we'd sit in the balcony. I loved it. Those red velvet seats, the smell of the popcorn.
We had a theater like that in Italy, but we didn't have popcorn.
What they sell at the concession stands? Meatballs?
The group laughs.
I don't know what they sold because we were so poor we weren't allowed to buy anything. My mother used to sneak snacks in under her dress. A sandwich, fruit, biscotti. She'd pull them out of her sleeves or from her bra.
Chip turns to Elizabeth.
You don't want to know where she gets the bottle of wine.
Elizabeth laughs into her cocktail.
Oh, we did the same thing, me and Grandpa Joe. I remember one time we snuck 2 Coca-Colas in to see A Tale of Two Cities. And I must have shook them up somehow because when we went to open them, they exploded all over us. We sat through the whole picture covered in a sticky mess.
Well, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Oh my God, I never thought about it that way. Lorenzo, you're a pip.
Chip slaps his hand down on Lorenzo's thigh and Lorenzo lights up with excitement.
I can't remember when I've had this much fun at a party.
I can't remember where I woke up this morning.
I think I'll make myself one more gin martini. Brian?
One more, and then I really must get going.
Lorenzo smiles.
Chip, come with me to the bar.
Well, that's a request I never denied.
Chip and Lorenzo walk over to the bar, and Lorenzo starts whispering.
Did you see the way he looked at Elizabeth when she walked in? He practically clutched his pearls.
Please, as if he could afford pearls.
Chip, that's not the point. I think you may have been right. He's just as fruity as the rest of us.
I told you I had a feeling. Well, what are you gonna do?
I don't know. What can I do? If I say anything or do anything and I'm wrong, well then it's arrivederci Hollywood.
Elizabeth walks over to make herself a cocktail.
What are you girls gossiping about over here?
Oh, nothing.
Lorenzo has a crush on Oliver Twist over there, but he can't tell whose team he plays for.
Chip!
What? If we can't tell her, then who can we tell?
That's true. He is cute, in a tap hunter kind of way.
Oh, he sure is.
Okay, I'll do it.
Do what?
I'll try to seduce him. If he goes for it, he's obviously straight, but if he turns me down, then he's clearly a homosexual.
Elizabeth, I adore you, but it doesn't mean he's queer if he turns you down.
It doesn't. Have you ever known a straight man to pass up an opportunity with me?
She's right. Ask Debbie Reynolds.
Chip Matthews, hush your mouth.
Sorry, but it's true.
What about Eddie?
Oh, leave Eddie to me. I'll ask him to play the piano and he'll be distracted for an hours.
She looks over at the men and then back at the gays.
Stand back. This was my best work since suddenly last summer.
Elizabeth saunters over to sit next to O'Sullivan. She pulls out a cigarette.
Do you have a light, Mr. O'Sullivan?
Of course, but please, call me Brian.
He lights her cigarette. She takes a long, seductive drag. Chip and Lorenzo watch her from the bar.
Thank you, Brian.
She breathes out the word Brian, almost like a seductive moan.
You're very welcome. May I call you Liz?
You may call me Elizabeth, only the press calls me Liz. Are you with the press, Mr. O'Sullivan?
Oh, no, I'm with the government.
Even worse.
She takes another drag of her cigarette.
I'm just kidding, Brian. No one's worse than the press.
They have a chuckle, and then Elizabeth stands up. Elizabeth walks over to Eddie and softly kisses him on the cheek.
Eddie, how about a little music?
Oh, they don't want to hear me play?
You got that right.
Lorenzo elbows Chip.
Yes, we do.
Oh, please, Mr. Fisher.
Oh, well, if you insist.
Eddie sits at the piano and begins to play That's the Chance You Take. Elizabeth smiles at Lorenzo and then walks over to O'Sullivan. She places her hand on his shoulder and very softly whispers in his ear.
I think I'll step outside for a little fresh air.
As she walks away, her hand traces over O'Sullivan's shoulders as Lorenzo watches from the bar. She then walks out the patio door, turning once to give O'Sullivan a glance. Lorenzo lights a cigarette and makes himself a drink. O'Sullivan looks at the patio door for a moment and then walks over to the bar.
I'll take that drink.
Oh, of course.
Lorenzo starts to fix him a cocktail.
I think Elizabeth Taylor just made a pass at me, right in front of her husband.
She's been known to do worse.
Well, I haven't.
So you won't be joining her?
No, I'm not that kind of guy.
What kind of guy are you? Inquiring minds want to know.
Unfortunately, Mr. Lucatelli, I'm not the one under the microscope.
Yes, how very unfortunate indeed.
As they lock eyes, they share a moment, and Lorenzo realizes he's in love with him. Just then, Rita sticks her face in between them.
What are you two doing over here? Do you have the Tanqueray?
Sorry, yes, we haven't.
Lorenzo hands Rita the bottle. O'Sullivan walks over to the piano and listens to Eddie sing. Elizabeth walks back in from the patio and over to Lorenzo.
Well, I've never been so insulted in my life. The man just left me standing out there like I was waiting for a bus.
A bus? Really?
I was on a bus once. In a movie.
Elizabeth notices Lorenzo's far-off stare.
What's going on? Did something just happen?
No, nothing happened, except that I think I'm in love with him.
Oh, Christ. Why are you queens always so dramatic?
Oh, I'm the dramatic one.
He grabs her as she giggles and puts her arms around him to dance. As they sway back and forth, Lorenzo gets misty-eyed.
Darling, please don't be sad.
I'm not sad. I just want to be happy.
Elizabeth wraps her arms around him tighter and lowers his face onto her shoulder. Chip walks into the room, drunker than ever. He goes up to Eddie at the piano.
Don't you know any good music?
Well, that went to number 1 and a bullet.
Well, I hope you saved the gun because it made me want to kill myself. Can you play something else?
Eddie starts to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. Everyone groans.
Okay, here's a little romance.
Eddie begins to play When Your Eyes Are Full of Moonlight.
When your eyes are full of moonlight and the wind is in your hair. When your eyes are full of moonlight, do you see me standing there?
Eddie shouts to his friend.
Lorenzo, you wop bastard, get over here and sing with me.
Lorenzo motions no and turns red as everyone in the party is encouraging him.
I take your hand and here I stand. I want you more and more, 'cause when your eyes are full of moonlight, it's you that I adore. Lorenzo, don't make me ask you again.
Come on, Lorenzo, sing.
Yeah, sing, Lorenzo.
Lorenzo looks at Brian smile and gets up the nerve to go to the piano. He stands next to Eddie and takes up where he left off in the song.
When your smile is full of stardust and your laughter's in the air, when your smile is full of stardust, Mona Lisa can't compare.
Everyone quiets down as it's clear that Lorenzo is singing from the heart as Brian stares back at him.
I hope that you do feel it too, and never shall we part, 'cause when your eyes are full of moonlight, you've stolen away my heart.
Lorenzo's words echo as truth as he looks at O'Sullivan. Eddie ends the song and the party erupts into applause as both Kitty and Elizabeth rush to kiss their husbands. Lorenzo glances over to O'Sullivan, who looks sad and confused. Veronica pours champagne into Brian's glass.
That was gin.
Oh, my mistake.
She takes the glass and chugs down the champagne gin mixture. She picks up a bottle of gin and pours it into the now empty glass before giving it back to him.
There you go, honey. Buttons up.
He lifts the glass to salute her as she knocks back the bottle of gin down her throat. This begins a blurry montage of drinking, dancing, and laughing as the music crescendos to reflect the drunken party feeling of the night. Cut to interior Lorenzo and Kitty's bungalow later that night. Hours have passed and the party is winding down. Eddie puts a Billie Holiday record on and slowly dances with Elizabeth. Veronica sits on the sofa smoking a cigarette while a drunk Nancy sleeps in her lap. From under the piano, giggles can be heard as Lisette and Kitty's legs lie intertwined. At the dining room table, Lorraine tosses the dice of a board game as Chip and Rita, both of whom are smoking cigars, watch her. In the kitchen, Lorenzo and O'Sullivan can also be heard giggling. Lorenzo is standing over the stove as a pot of sauce is simmering and another pot of water is boiling.
And now we just wait until the pasta is done and we're ready to eat.
How do you know when it's done?
You know when you know. You can feel it.
You don't throw it against the wall to see if it sticks?
Are you kidding? Do you know how expensive this wallpaper is?
I clearly know nothing about cooking. I can barely make a cheese sandwich and that has 2 ingredients.
I learned from my grandmother. She didn't want to teach me because boys weren't supposed to know these kinds of things. But she never had any granddaughters, so she finally, reluctantly, taught me everything.
He sticks a pasta ladle in the boiling water and reveals a strand of spaghetti. He feels it with his fingers.
But be careful, that's hot.
I deal with blow dryers and hot curlers all day. This is nothing.
He puts the spaghetti into his mouth.
God damn, that's hot!
He spits it out into his hands and looks at O'Sullivan and they laugh more. They both stop smiling and seem to get very serious. They look into each other's eyes as if they're about to kiss. Just as their lips are about to touch, they're startled by a shout.
Yahtzee!
Lorenzo and O'Sullivan quickly pull apart.
God damn it, Lorraine, again? How much do we owe you now?
$4.75.
O'Sullivan turns to Lorenzo.
I really should get going.
Now? What about the pasta?
Lorenzo, I can't do this. I came here on a job. I shouldn't be drinking and dancing and having pasta. I'm sorry.
O'Sullivan stares at Lorenzo with sad eyes. He exits the kitchen and goes into the living room. Cut to interior Lorenzo and Kitty's living room seconds later. O'Sullivan walks out of the kitchen and over to the front door as he grabs his coat and hat.
It's been really swell meeting all of you, really. Mr. Fisher, Mrs. Fisher, truly an honor.
He shakes Eddie's hand and kisses Elizabeth on the cheek.
Pleasure to meet you, Brian.
Hope to see you again, Brian. Really, I do.
You're welcome to come back anytime.
O'Sullivan turns to see Lorenzo standing in the kitchen doorway.
Goodbye.
O'Sullivan puts on his hat and walks out. The remaining guests all turn silently to look at Lorenzo, who turns to look at Chip.
Go after him before you regret it.
Are you...
Go, goddammit!
Lorenzo bolts out the door after O'Sullivan. Cut to exterior Lorenzo's driveway moments later. Brian is unlocking his car door as Lorenzo comes running after him.
Brian, wait!
Lorenzo, stop. If the government found out...
Oh, screw the government, Brian. This isn't about them. It's about me and you. Are you just going to walk out after this night? Never talk to me again?
I'm sorry. This night should have never happened.
Brian, do you want to spend the rest of your life lying to yourself?
Me? What about you? Everything tonight has been one lie after the next.
Not everything.
O'Sullivan stares at him for a moment. Lorenzo quivers as if he's about to cry. O'Sullivan gets in the car and takes off. As he speeds away, he passes the street sign for Tuxedo Terrace. Lorenzo stands in the driveway with his heart broken. Fade out. Interior MGM Studios hair and makeup the next morning. Lorenzo is working on the hair for a starlet in his chair. Lorenzo's clearly sad and withdrawn. Eddie is by his side, attempting to cheer him up.
Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we take my convertible and drive down to Laguna after we wrap? You know, we can go to that place with the oysters you love.
No thanks.
Oh, okay. You want to come by my place tonight? We can play poker. We can even invite Sinatra.
Nah, he hates me. Just like every other man in this town.
Listen, I know you Italians have a flair for the drama, but you're being ridiculous. Take it from me, nobody hates you. Well, okay, maybe Sinatra does, but he's just not big on queers in general.
If you're trying to cheer me up, you're doing a hell of a job.
Marty walks over with a clipboard as Lorenzo is spraying hairspray on the star in front of him.
We're ready for you on set. Is she all done, Lorenzo?
Let's get a look at you, Miss Clooney.
He spins her around in her chair and looks at her. Rosemary Clooney is revealed. She is a beautiful movie star with big soft eyes and a velvet voice. She stares at Lorenzo and puts her hand on his.
You'll be okay, kid.
Thank you, Rosemary.
She gives him a peck on the cheek and walks off to set with Marty. Rita walks up with 2 wigs on wig stands.
Hey boss, which of these do you want us to use for Erica for her big number?
Whichever one you want, Rita.
Well, that's the problem. I like this one, but Erica says she thinks the red would stand out more.
Okay, Rita, sounds good.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it's fine, whatever you want.
He walks over to set with a comb and fusses over Rosemary. Rita turns to Eddie.
I know he's been down, but it's been over a week already.
And the poor bastard's been in Hollywood for 15 years, and well, it's only now he learned what it feels like to be rejected.
They look over at Lorenzo with sad eyes. Cut to interior on set seconds later. Lorenzo stands just off camera on a set that's decorated like a bedroom. The lights and cameras are all in place as Rosemary Clooney walks on stage and takes a seat in front of a vanity. The director walks up to her.
Okay, Rosemary, we're gonna go for one just like rehearsal. Remember, you're heartbroken, alone in your room, looking in the mirror and contemplating.
I got it, Charlie. Unfortunately, it's all too familiar.
All right, everybody, here we go.
The director walks off the stage and sits behind in his chair. Lorenzo stands nearby.
Quiet on set.
Marty walks up to the camera with a slate.
Roll camera.
Rolling.
Rosemary Clooney, hey there, on the Eddie Fisher Show. Take 1.
Marty shuts the slate and walks off stage. Rosemary catches Lorenzo's eyes staring at her off camera, and her mood changes.
Action. Cue the music.
Music. Hey there, Rosemary Clooney. The opening chords of the song start playing as Rosemary turns to the mirror and begins to sing to her reflection.
Lately, when I'm in my room, all by myself, in the solitary gloom, I call to myself, hey there, you with the stars in your eyes. Love never made a fool of you. You used to be too wise.
Lorenzo watches her with tears in his eyes. Cut to interior O'Sullivan's apartment a week later. The sound of Rosemary Clooney singing Hey There continues on in O'Sullivan's apartment. O'Sullivan lives in a very modest, poorly decorated bachelor studio. His bed, kitchen, and living room all seem to be in one room. Books are strewn about. There are open cans of food on the coffee table. His socks are drying on the radiator. Hanging on the door is the tuxedo Lorenzo gave him. O'Sullivan stands over a pot of boiling water at his stove. He grabs a nearby tennis racket, and in homage to Jack Lemmon in the apartment, he holds the racket over the sink as he strains the pot of linguine over the tennis racket. He dumps the linguine into a bowl and covers it with some sauce from a jar. An old memory flashes into his mind, and he smiles.
Miss Linguini.
He walks over to the TV, which is turned on as Rosemary is on the screen, continuing to sing.
Hey there, you, on that high-flying cloud. Though he won't throw a come to you, he thinks someday he'll come to you. Better forget him with his nose in the air. He has you dancing on a string. Break it and he won't care.
O'Sullivan watches her and seems to be touched by the lyrics of the song. As he scoops spaghetti into his mouth, he looks down at the bowl. Cut to interior, an underground gay bar in Hollywood later that night. A small and dark room with gay men from all walks of life canoodling discreetly in corners and shadows. On the record player spins the same song, Hey There.
Won't you take this advice I hand you like a mother? Or are you not seeing things clear? Are you too much in love to hear? Is it all going in one ear and out the other?
As the song ends, the record spins around on the turntable silently with surface noise. A pair of hands in lavender opera-length gloves pick it up and replace it with another album. The hands gently place the needle down on the record, and Judy Garland's voice can now be heard. The hands are revealed to be Billy's, the same waiter from MGM, only now he's wearing earrings, a pearl necklace, and a cocktail dress. Billy turns away from the record player and walks back behind the bar, where Lorenzo sits sulking on a bar stool, drowning his sorrows in a scotch and soda. Billy prepares a martini and pours it into a coupe for himself. He clinks glasses with Lorenzo, who barely acknowledges him.
Well, cheers.
What are we cheering to?
I haven't got the damnest idea, but I needed a drink.
You and me both.
They both take a sip.
What's his name?
Brian.
I had a Brian once. Good guy. A senator, I think. Or maybe he was a judge.
Lorenzo gives him a half smile.
Oh, come on, Lorenzo. Don't be so goddamn hard on yourself. You think you've got it bad? I'm wearing my Aunt Linda's cocktail dress, for Christ's sakes.
Your Aunt Linda gave you her dress?
Are you kidding? My mother found out I've been stealing her sister's clothes and threatened to have me committed.
No.
I told her. The only thing I could ever commit to was a bottle of vodka.
Lorenzo lets out a chuckle.
There we go. That's better.
Milton walks over to the turntable and attempts to change the record that's playing.
Duke, I swear to Christ, if you change Judy, I'll hop over this bar and strangle you with my grandmother's pearls.
Milton backs away from the turntable with his hands up. He heads back over to a table and sits with another man.
Another round?
You have to ask.
Fade to INS office the same evening. O'Sullivan is working into the evening. The office is dark with the exception of his desk lamp. A janitor is slowly mopping nearby. Brian turns a page and sees the file for Lorenzo Lucatelli. He stares at his name and address for a moment. The janitor moves the mop closer, and Brian picks up his feet so we can mop underneath him. Fade to interior Lorenzo and Kitty's house later that night. Kitty is home reading a book when she's alarmed by a knock at the door. She opens it to reveal Billy in full drag, holding up a drunken Lorenzo, barely conscious.
Sorry we're so late. He was the last husband on my route.
Oh my god. Is he okay?
Well, I wouldn't let him trim my bangs, but he'll be all right in the morning.
Let's put him on the couch.
They drag Lorenzo to the couch and lay him down. She loosens Lorenzo's tie.
I'll take him into the bedroom later and slip him into something more comfortable.
Like what? A coma?
She laughs and then realizes what Billy is wearing.
Oh my. You drove like that?
Of course not. I wore my driving gloves, naturally.
Thanks an awful lot, Billy.
Don't mention it, kid. He'd do the same for me. He has already, actually, twice. Listen, I gotta run. I've got a congressman waiting for me.
At this hour? Where?
Behind the Hollywood sign. God, I love this town.
Billy gives Kitty a peck and runs out the door. Cut to interior Lorenzo's bedroom later that night. Kitty has a compress on Lorenzo's head as he lies in bed.
Kitty,
Yes, Lorenzo.
if I get deported, I want you to keep the house.
Don't talk like that, Lorenzo.
She helps him sip a glass of water.
I'm serious. If they send me back to Italy, you stay here with Lisette.
You're not going anywhere.
We don't know that yet.
You love this house. It wouldn't feel right without you.
It's yours. It already is. It's in your name.
What?
I went to the bank yesterday. The house is paid off and it's in your name. I want you to have it.
Kitty begins to cry.
If you go, I will be devastated.
So will I, kitten. So will I. But there are some things in life we can't control, like where we are born or who we love. Just promise me you'll take good care of it.
Of course I will. Exactly as you do.
And for crying out loud, don't ever let Lisette cook in my kitchen again.
They have a giggle and she lays on his lap. Lorenzo stares off to his closet and sees the suit that O'Sullivan wore to the party hanging on the door. Cut to exterior Immigration Headquarters, Los Angeles, the next morning. A brand new Cadillac pulls up to the headquarters of the INS. A driver in a black suit quickly comes out and opens the back door. Elizabeth Taylor steps out. Her head is covered by a scarf and her face is hidden beneath a pair of enormous sunglasses. She wears a shape-hugging pink dress and matching shoes. As the driver closes her door, she begins walking into the building. He accompanies her. Cut to interior Immigration Headquarters, Los Angeles, moments later. Elizabeth walks through the lobby into the elevator and turning heads as she goes. People begin staring and whispering to each other as the elevator door closes. Cut to Interior Immigration Headquarters, 7th floor, moments later. The elevator opens at the 7th floor and Elizabeth emerges with her driver. A receptionist desk sits across from the elevator bank.
Brian O'Sullivan?
Last desk on the left. Do you have an appointment?
Elizabeth doesn't reply, doesn't break her stride as she walks past her into a huge office with dozens of agents and federal workers at their desks. As she passes them and people begin to realize who she is, the typing and talking stops and a hush falls over the office. The receptionist follows closely behind her.
Jack, I've got to call you back. You're never going to believe who just walked in.
Elizabeth keeps walking and she spots Brian at the last desk on the left. He's on a phone call and doesn't see her.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
O'Sullivan looks up and sees her coming towards him and quickly hangs up his phone and stands up. He mutters to himself.
Holy shit.
Holy shit is right, Mr. O'Sullivan.
Out of an office, Joe Turner, mid-50s, white male, appears. He is O'Sullivan's supervisor.
What's going on out here?
He spots Elizabeth.
Holy shit.
Oh, good. We're all on the same page. I don't mean to disturb any of your work. I'd just like to have a moment with Mr. O'Sullivan here.
Certainly, Miss Taylor.
Thank you.
The receptionist catches up and approaches Elizabeth.
May I bring you anything, Miss Taylor?
I'll take a dry vodka martini with an olive, please.
But it's 11 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, right. Better make it a twist then.
The receptionist dashes away quickly to retrieve the drink. Elizabeth turns back to O'Sullivan.
What can I do for you, Ms. Taylor?
I need you to see something, Mr. O'Sullivan.
She pulls the scarf off of her head and reveals a mess of dry, frizzy hair with gray roots. The ladies in the office gasp, as does O'Sullivan.
Do you see this mess on my head, Mr. O'Sullivan?
I do, ma'am.
Do you know why I have this mess on my head?
The receptionist returns with the martini.
Thank you, dear.
She takes a sip of her martini.
Delicious. Well, do you, Mr. O'Sullivan?
I'm sorry, do I what?
Do you know why I have dry, mangled, gray hair?
Is it for a picture?
No, Mr. O'Sullivan. It's not for a picture. It's because my hair guru, the man I've been going to faithfully for the past 15 years, is in a deep, deep depression. And do you know why he's in a deep depression, Mr. O'Sullivan?
I believe I do, Miss Taylor.
Well, what are you going to do about it?
Well,
He looks around the room at all of his colleagues, staring at him and at Mr. Turner.
We're going to make sure that he gets to stay in this country is what we're going to do. Yes, exactly. We're going to make sure Mr. Lucatelli remains in the United States. Anyone who holds such importance and esteem to someone as yourself should remain right here in America.
Well, very good. Thank you. Good day to you, Mr. O'Sullivan. Thank you, sir.
She puts her scarf back on and heads back towards the elevator. As the elevator doors close, the entire office begins murmuring to each other and gossiping. Cut to Exterior Immigration Headquarters, Los Angeles, moments later. Elizabeth and her driver are walking back to her Cadillac. She still has the martini in her hand. O'Sullivan comes running out after her.
Elizabeth, wait.
She turns around.
I was never going to deport him. Never. I just wanted you to know that.
Brian, I didn't come down here about my hair. And I didn't come down here to tell you not to deport him, and you know it.
I know, it's just... It's not that easy.
You're telling me? I'm on my third husband.
Fourth.
Oh, right. I forgot one.
She takes off her sunglasses and looks him in the eyes.
Listen, Brian. Love is never easy. But it's not that damn hard.
She takes a final swig of the martini and hands him the empty glass. As she gets back in the car and drives away, she leaves a confused Brian standing on the sidewalk. Cut to Interior Immigration Headquarters, Los Angeles, 7th floor, later that day. Brian is sitting at his desk pensively. Turner comes by and drops off a file.
Here you go, your next case. Martinez family, Sherman Oaks. My next case? Yeah, Lucatelli is closed. This is your next one.
Turner walks away. Brian thumbs through the file as he hears some commotion coming from a nearby office. He walks over to the window as he sees a Japanese couple embracing and kissing. An INS agent shakes each of their hands and the couple embraces again. As they walk out of the office, they pass by Brian, who smiles at them with sad eyes. As he watches them leave, he seems to have made his mind up about something. He walks over to his desk and takes a few items off of it, last of which are 2 empty Coca-Cola bottles from the 1930s. He walks with these items out of the office and towards the elevator.
Tell Liz I said hi.
Brian gets in the elevator, and as the doors close, he smiles. Interior, Lorenzo and Kitty's home later that evening. Lorenzo walks in the front door from work. He throws his car keys in a bowl and heads back for his room. Kitty's voice can be heard from the other room.
Lorenzo, is that you?
Hi, kitten.
Lisette and I wanted to know if you wanted to have dinner with us tonight.
No thanks, I'm not hungry. I'll take my usual in the bedroom.
He makes his way over to the bar. Kitty appears from the kitchen.
Are you sure? Lisette cooked.
In my kitchen? How many times do I have to tell you?
Kitty steps out of his way as he walks to the kitchen. Cut to interior kitchen, same moment. Lorenzo barges into the kitchen. Pots are bubbling and boiling as he looks over at the wall, which is covered with strands of spaghetti.
What the hell?
Well, I didn't know how to tell if it was done.
Lorenzo turns to reveal Brian standing in the kitchen holding a large bowl of pasta.
Brian,
Sorry about the wallpaper.
what are you doing here?
We never got to have that bowl of pasta, so I came back and made it.
Lorenzo's face lights up.
Oh, Brian.
Don't get too excited. This sauce is from a jar.
Lorenzo smiles at him with tears in his eyes. Brian walks the bowl of pasta out into the dining room where Kitty and Lisette are seated. He begins dishing out the pasta. The front door opens as Chip, Elizabeth, Eddie, and Rita walk in.
Hey, girls. Oh, good. We're just in time. I'm starving.
You made it.
What are they doing here?
I invited them. Hope you don't mind. Oh, by the way, after dinner, you have to dye Elizabeth's hair.
O'Sullivan looks at him and smiles. Rita walks over and gives Lorenzo a big hello kiss as Eddie shakes his hand. Elizabeth greets O'Sullivan and everyone begins chatting and talking with everyone. The dinner party is in a happy state as the sun goes down over Tuxedo Terrace. Music, When Your Eyes Are Full of Moonlight, fade to black.